Today on the Spiritual Reality Podcast, we're going to take a look at what in the world is going on in Nigeria. You got people on one side saying that there's a genocide happening of Christians, and on the other side, you have people saying there's nothing to see there. Also, we're going to take a look at what the election of Zohran Mamdani means for New York City and for the United States in general. Let's get to it. All right, recently President Trump mentioned that he may look into going into Nigeria to do something about the massacre of Christians there. And Ted Cruz also introduced a bill that would put sanctions on Nigeria unless leaders of that country do more to protect Christians also. And of course, the idea that we would take it upon ourselves to go into another country to stop something is kind of concerning. Like, should we be meddling in what happens in other countries, that kind of thing? It feels like that should be done in very, very rare cases. And I can imagine that even if Germany had not invaded other countries, and if we had evidence that they were rounding up Jews in Germany and executing them, that we would have had to consider going in to stop that if we had understood the level of what was happening, even if they hadn't invaded other countries. And so when you try to make those kind of comparisons, you start thinking, okay, at some point when you hear about an atrocity so bad, yeah, other countries really should step in to save lives. And so how do we determine if we're at that point yet, right? That's a tough question to answer. And I do think that sanctions can be a powerful tool to put pressure on other nations that are not doing what they should be doing when it comes to human rights. It lets them know that other nations are noticing, and it's a good first step in letting them know that it's not acceptable, and the rest of the world is kind of persuaded to do something about it. So the debate right now is over what is actually going on. Some are saying that it's just overhyped. Some are saying that it's as many Muslims being killed as Christians, and some are saying that it is an intentional genocide of Christians. And after reviewing various liberal and conservative news outlets and what they're saying, here's what I think I can conclude. There is widespread terrorism happening in Nigeria, driven by Islamists, driven by Muslims. And the government is not doing nearly enough to snuff it out. The primary threat, again, is coming from a group called Boko Haram, which is a violent extremist Sunni Islamist group based in northeastern Nigeria. The name Boko Haram roughly translates to Western education is forbidden. The primary goal for them is to overthrow the Nigerian government and establish an Islamist state that is governed by a strict interpretation of Sharia law, free from Western influence, which the group views as corrupting Islamic values. They reject Western education, democracy, and existing national borders. So, they really are disruptors. They want to completely disrupt everything. Many have made the point that they have targeted all religions, though there seems to be clear proof that they target Christians the most, which makes sense because they hate Western civilization, and they probably see Christianity as more of a religion of the West, which, of course, is incorrect. We got Christianity from the Middle East and from Africa, right? However, they do attack mosques in addition to attacking churches, though the attacks on the churches are more frequent, especially when you think about the fact that a lot of this is happening in northern Nigeria, where they operate. So northern Nigeria is much more of a Muslim area, and southern is much more of a Christian area. And yet more churches are being attacked in the northern area that's not really that Christian than mosques that are being attacked. And they're attacking moderate mosques that are not serious enough about Sharia law and that kind of thing. So when you really look at it that way, even though Christianity is kind of rare in the northern part and it's more plentiful in the southern part, it's interesting that even there, way more churches are being attacked than mosques. So here's what I can gather about what's going on there. Number one, yes, there is violence against several groups of people. Yes, it is worse for Christians, and Christians are absolutely being attacked and killed for their faith. There's no question about that. Yes, moderate Muslims are also being killed for not being extreme enough. So more than one thing can be true at the same time, right? Those who want to dismiss it by saying that other people groups are also being targeted are not being honest about the intentional massacre of Christians. And those who are saying that it's only Christians that are being targeted are also not telling the whole story. The general consensus seems to be that over 7,000 Christians have been killed in 2025 for their faith in Nigeria. That is a serious issue that we should be concerned about, and we should do what we can to make it stop. So, what can we do? How should we respond as Christians to seeing what is happening to our fellow brothers and sisters in Nigeria? Well, obviously, first of all, we should be praying for them. There's no question about it. That should be a very serious matter of prayer for all of us. We should be making it a regular practice to pray for their safety, pray for the spread of the gospel as a result of what's happening, and pray that evil will subside. But we can also contact members of Congress and let them know that we are all for them using whatever pressure that they can use to put on the Nigerian government to put a stop to all the violence, not just violence against Christians. When people debate over whether the violence is mostly against Christians or are there other groups being targeted, it's kind of a moot point for those of us that are Christians, right? We aren't for any groups being mass murdered. So that point really still, the pressure still needs to be put on the Nigerian government to step up and do something about this. Should we support sending U.S. troops to Nigeria? This is a really complicated question when you're looking at it from a Christian perspective. On the one hand, this is a very righteous cause, whether only Christians are being targeted or not. It's never good to allow evil like mass terrorism to take root and grow its power. That's never good. On the other hand, I think respecting the sovereignty of nations is a biblical principle. God sets up nations. In Acts chapter 17, he says that he sets the boundaries of people groups. He says a similar thing in the Old Testament as well. The idea of separate nations is a biblical idea. God did not design the world to run as a one world government. And when that finally does happen, it's going to be a really, really bad thing in the tribulation. However, when a government will not stop terrorism, will not protect its people from massacre, is there a place for another nation to step in and act? And I think that starting with sanctions and other diplomatic solutions to put pressure on that kind of government to do its job, I think that's a good start. But I wonder if it could be possible to maybe negotiate with the government to get them to actually invite international help. I'm baffled by the reaction of the Nigerian government to Trump's suggestion that we might step in to fix the situation. Their government felt very much like that Trump was not accurately describing what was going on and that it was completely unnecessary. And it feels like that they're either, too proud to ask for help or to say that they need the help and they don't want to admit on the world stage that they can't handle it on their own, or they are personally just afraid of Boko Haram and feel like they need to do whatever it takes to keep them happy. But you would think that they would welcome the help and even invite it if it would mean cleaning up their country so that their people could flourish. If diplomatic solutions and sanctions don't accomplish anything, you have to start thinking about maybe building an international coalition to go in and stop the terrorism and the mass murder that is going on. I don't like to see our troops sent to other countries constantly just to clean things up or police other nations. It feels like we never have a real exit plan, especially in these nations that have a strong Muslim influence, because they seem to like warring clans and chaos more than they like democracy. So we just create a void. The void gets filled with the same kind of mentality. So as soon as they, we leave in those situations, it always kind of reverts back. But I don't know that we can police the world, but at some point we have to ask, are we okay with standing by while something that looks like the beginnings of a Holocaust is in its early stages? Now, I'm not making that comparison right now, obviously. You have to be very careful when you use that as a comparison. But that situation didn't start with 6 million people being murdered. It started with tens of thousands, and we are already at that point in Nigeria. So you can also give to organizations if you're looking for something to do. You can also give to organizations like Voice of the Martyrs, who help support and take care of folks who are experiencing persecution for their faith. All right, well, let's get into the election of Zohran Mamdani as the mayor of New York City. I'm sure that by now everyone knows. I was completely, like so many technical problems last week, did not get a chance to get out a podcast. And so therefore this is kind of old news, right? But he won the mayoral race in New York City, and it's a very big deal because at a time when New York City is not exactly doing great because of its liberal policies, they've now elected the most far-left candidate possible. And depending on how many of those policies he's successful in instituting, it literally could ruin the city permanently or at least set it back for decades. Some of the things that he has proposed: a 2% flat tax annually on New Yorkers earning over $1 million a year. He's also proposed raising the corporate tax rate by over 4% more. He's a socialist, so he likes to give things away that the general public would like to have for free, and he likes to tax everybody to do it. And so he's proposing free childcare, free buses. An independent analysis said that the free bus idea would cost the city $650 million annually, which I'm pretty sure they can't afford. There's no telling how expensive it will be to provide childcare. I mean, that just is just no limit to what that could cost. And so he's also proposed city-run grocery stores that will not seek to turn a profit. And that may sound amazing, but it's not that simple. City-run grocery stores will not have the bargaining power of large grocery store chains, so it's going to be hard for them to actually offer groceries for cheaper, even if they're not making a profit. More than likely, being a government-run entity and not even trying to make a profit, they're probably going to operate deep in the red, and that's going to mean that they're going to need more and more taxpayer funding every single year. Meanwhile, they're running off their wealthiest taxpayers because they don't want to pay the taxes in New York City and New York State any longer. And so if they can offer better prices than smaller grocery stores in the area, then they're probably going to put a lot of those small businesses out of business, all for an idea that can't be sustained over the long haul. So in the short term, they're going to put other people out of business because their prices are better, but then over the long haul, it's not going to be feasible to keep it going. So now what have you done? They talk about food deserts. They're going to create food deserts. A better idea might be to offer tax credits for private stores to locate in food deserts if there really is such a thing there. Right now, they block companies like Walmart that could come in and drastically reduce grocery prices. The idea that a poorly run city is going to be able to do a better job with supply chains than stores that are already doing that on a large scale across the country is laughable. So instead of incentivizing businesses and wealthy taxpayers to come to the city and invest, he is going to encourage them to leave and make their money and spend their money elsewhere, which will leave the city in a huge financial crisis and even less able to afford all the social programs that they already have, much less all the ones that he's proposing. Of course, in the past, he's also suggested that the police should be defunded. Late in the campaign, to complete transparency, he backed off on that, so we'll see kind of how he governs. He also wants to freeze rent for stabilized housing, which I believe covers like 1 million apartments in New York City. At the same time, he thinks that he's going to be able to increase the amount of housing in the city. Frankly, those two things don't go together. More than likely, less developers will invest in housing in New York City if he pursues those policies, which will cause continual shortage of housing. And what happens when a resource is scarce? It costs more. So the bottom line on almost all of his policies is that he's coming from a socialist and social justice viewpoint. He has even suggested taxing whiter neighborhoods at a higher rate than other areas. He's coming from an approach of government forcing things to be fair and controlling more and more aspects of people's lives. He literally said something to the effect in his speech, acceptance speech, that it's going to be exciting to see that to prove that there's nothing that government can't solve, which is just unbelievably crazy. Right? And so, historically, we've seen how this works out, right? It doesn't go well for anyone, but biblically, this is also not the right way. You can go back to my episode on Tim Walz saying that socialism is just neighborliness, or you can pick up my book, Christ and Culture, for the biblical perspective on socialism. While there are great examples of Christians being generous in the New Testament, it was absolutely no mandate to form a government that redistributes wealth in order to make everything fair. It ignores what we know biblically about human nature and our fallenness. It kills the creativity that God has placed in us. It attacks people that are putting forth the most effort and personal risk. And instead of spreading prosperity evenly or spreading it more widely, it spreads misery evenly. And so again, this idea that government can solve all of our problems, it's almost kind of idolatry, right? So I think it's sad for New York City that they fell for these offers of all this free stuff, most of which probably won't happen. But I also think it's scary that Americans are still enamored with the promises of socialism. Of course, you've also got the issue that he is a Muslim. Will that have some sort of effect on what his administration promotes? True Islamic beliefs, I've talked about that recently, are not compatible with the American Constitution. So we will see if that becomes an issue as well. If his views actually make it into policy and survive Supreme Court challenges, it will be a dark time for New York City. We have to continue to help people understand the dangers of socialism, and we have to continue to help people see that following Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. The best thing we can do is be making disciples and helping them get a biblical worldview on all of these cultural issues. So that's my time for today. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, and we will see you next Friday.